too. So
yeah. I'm going to start that part and then we'll go from there.
Okay, sounds good.
Good morning, everyone. So happy to see folks. All right. So thank you for your patience as I'm just bringing people in. It's great to see so many faces today. For anyone who is joining, if you would like to be on camera, please feel free to put yourself on camera. If you would rather not, I'll respect that, of course. It's just helpful to see people. So we are going to get started. I know we have a couple of folks joining. And I haven't started the recording yet. That will be started in just a moment. I'm going to get us going first. All right, so I'm going to start the recording and we'll do introductions. So good morning, everyone. I am Miranda Stiers. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I am a prevention program specialist with the partnership. Joining us today is Jessica Merrill, our communications manager, and I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for welcoming me to this Prevention Peer Network webinar. My name is Jess Merrill. I'm the communications manager of the partnership. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and today I'm zooming in from Lafayette, which is Yokuts, Bay Meatloaf, and Molesmaland. And my comms teammate should be joining pretty soon here. Oh yeah, looks like Megan's here.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jess. My name is Megan Tanahashi. I am the communications coordinator here at the partnership. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm standing on Nisenan land today in the Sierra Nevada foothills. And yeah, we're so excited to talk to you today about our DVAM campaign this year.
Just a couple of housekeeping things for everyone. Let me get this into our meeting. I'm putting the link in the chat so folks can find out whose native land they are occupying. I am joining from Nisenan land in Sacramento. Couple of housekeeping. You can expand your audio if at any point you have trouble hearing us. You can click the little button next to mute and it's an arrow up that will give you the options for calling in, or if you're joining from your computer and or joining in from phone and having to switch, you can do that. Your video can be disabled. We also welcome you to be on camera. It is being recorded, but however you have it positioned on your screen, it'll show up pretty minimally. You can see who the other participants are if you click on the participants button. And we also have a chat, so you can type your questions and comments here, and would love to know who is joining us this morning. So we're going to be talking about Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and our comms team is going to be presenting on the campaign, and we'll have a lot of time for questions and answers and hearing about some of the plans that folks are developing for their own DVAM campaigns. And we always start with a land acknowledgement, acknowledging that we are on the traditional territories and homelands of California Native people. These nations include over 120 federally recognized tribes and many other non-recognized tribes that are all very culturally diverse. We thank these nations for their generosity, and we keep them in our hearts and thoughts as we are in this space today, this week, and every day. As I said, I've put a link in the chat for native land. You can see exactly whose land you are occupying. And we would encourage folks to do introductions via chat. So you can type in your name, your agency, and location. It's also helpful if we can know pronouns and whose land folks are on. So we'll give it a moment for that. All right, so keep those introductions coming. Welcome, folks. that, we are gonna switch this. Just one moment. Go to sharing, and then I am going to turn it over to our fabulous comms team. And as you're ready for me to progress the slides, just let me know. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So we'd like to introduce you today to our Domestic Violence Awareness Month campaign, which the theme this year will be flipping the script, rewriting California's future to be free of domestic violence. And so this is the theme for October coming up. And we'd love to share a little bit more about, oh, sorry, I hear an echo, elements that we have planned for this campaign. So next slide, if you please. So flipping the script, what does that mean? There's three main goals that we have planned for this campaign. The first one is highlighting everyday Californians who are striving towards safe, healthy, and thriving relationships at every level of society. So what this means for us is really centering on authentic messengers. Who are the folks every day that are doing the work that don't always get their voice elevated on a platform? Who are the folks that are doing work behind the scenes? Who are the folks that have the lived experiences? So really focusing on authentic messengers. Oftentimes we see that when it comes to any sort of lifting up of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, right? It's usually an executive director of an organization. It's usually somebody at the highest levels. And so we really want to make the voices that are being heard equitable and in the representation of that. So that's why it's really important for us to use authentic messengers. The second main goal that we have for the campaign is featuring those who are breaking silos and connecting the dots between decolonization, racial justice, gender justice, and access to housing and economic justice for survivors, healing and accountability, and so much more. Again, with flipping the script, we want to talk about not just identifying the intersections of where all of our work with domestic violence intersects with all of these interconnected things, but also diving a little bit deeper. We often see for Domestic Violence Awareness Month a very surface level of like DV 101, right? But what's the next level of that? It's really addressing the root causes, and I'm sure you as preventionists do that work and are familiar with that work every day. And so really addressing the causes and the root causes of domestic violence is how we're going to end domestic violence, right? And then finally, bringing forward solutions to prevent and dismantle the barriers impacting survivors. So lifting up a few resources for survivors, but also lifting up resources for the education of those who do need the one-on-one, right? The legislators, the public supporters who, they tune in a little bit, but how can we capture their attention? And really too, with the legislators, part of it is educating them on what domestic violence prevention is and how that it can be prevented, right? Sometimes they don't even know that simple fact. So those are our main goals for the campaign. Next slide, please. So like I said, the first goal is passing the mic to authentic messengers. So tying back to flipping the script and really centering on the voices that we don't necessarily hear from. And so the three main components and like activities, if you will, that we are putting together to support this goal are the campaign visuals being created by a survivor. So I'm not sure if you all have seen this in e-news, but our last February, for Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month and Prevention Month, we had a youth graphic designer create all of the visuals for the TDVAPM and Orange Day campaign. So we're really trying to do that again here with DVAM, and we're looking for survivors who are designers, artists to apply. So the application closes this Friday. If you have a survivor in mind that you'd like to reach out to, please forward them the application. We can put that link in the chat, I think. And then the second activity that we have to pass the mic is to have a series of OpDocs and blogs. So OpDocs are a video format of an op-ed. So I'm sure you've seen those. Those are opinion pieces that are written up and sent to like the editor of a paper, but we really wanted to put this into a video format. We are noticing right now that I don't know if you all have seen that Instagram recently made an announcement that they are no longer a photo sharing platform, but their focus is going to be shifting to video. So in order to work with that algorithm and strategy, we strategized to have a series of OpDocs. We're aiming for a series of 4 to 10 minute videos, and the blog series will be of a similar length, just written instead of in a video format. And those videos will be going up on our social media throughout the month, and we encourage you to share those. And then finally, the last kind of component of passing the mic is doing an Instagram live Q&A session. We're going to have 2 survivors on. And really, again, in the spirit of passing the mic, we're letting them take over the platform and really create their vision. So we have a meeting coming up in a couple of weeks with them to plan that. So we really didn't want to dictate to them, because this is passing the mic, right, and centering their voices. So we didn't want to tell them what to do. We really just wanted to invite them to co-create the space. So we don't have any details on that yet, but we do have plans to meet with them in the next coming weeks. So that's our first goal. And then the next slide. And then finally, for the OpDocs and blogs to look forward to, here's just a few examples. Breaking the School to Prison Pipeline, the intersections of Indigenous Peoples Day and Coming Out Day. So I believe it's October 11th, which is a Monday, is both Indigenous Peoples Days and National Coming Out Day. And so we thought, what better time to talk about those 2 intersections and the intersections of intimate partner and gender-based violence, because it is October. And it would be make a great topic for an OpDoc. So we hope that we have the speaker come through for that. Climate change, wildfires, DV, and housing, and really the displacement that goes on between all 3 of those things at play, coming together to create even more unsafe conditions, right? Housing conditions for survivors. We do have that one confirmed. Supporting immigrant survivors, and then destigmatizing survivorship in the workplace, interrupting white supremacy, and creating trauma-informed policies. And those are some of the things you can look forward to. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to pass this over to my colleague Jess. Was it Jess? Or actually, I think this is Michelle. I don't think folks had a chance to meet Michelle yet. She was just starting to log on and get started right before this. So I'm going to pass the mic to Michelle and let her tell you a little bit about our second goal.
Yeah, hi everyone. Sorry I was late. My monitor died and I was having tech issues. Anyway, so my name is Michelle and I'm the communications coordinator, one of them at the partnership. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm on Nisenan land. So I really wanted to share with you goal 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to have, what we notice is a lot of people ask us, like, is domestic violence preventable? Like, what is domestic violence prevention? And so that's one of the things we're going to focus on. So we're going to have a landing page that has information about like what domestic violence prevention is, along with information about the recent budget win for prevention programs. This 1 to 2 pager and resource landing page will also have a map of all of our members and highlight resources, especially resources for Native and Indigenous survivors. And of course, we'll have Purple Thursday sample post and image, as well as, the proclamations for people to pass that it is honoring Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
And Michelle, I'm not sure if you can see the chat. You're a little bit quiet, so if you could speak a little louder. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that. Next slide. Jess, would
Hi,
you like
everyone.
to share goal 3?
Yeah, thank you. Hey, everyone. So I'd like to talk about the third goal, which focuses on an area where the partnership is uniquely equipped to create change, and that's through public policy. We really want to encourage survivors, especially, to learn about the process of lobbying, and really ask survivors who have already participated in our policy advocacy day and in legislative meetings to help demystify it. One of our confirmed participants is Ben Salemme. He is a youth leader with H.A.R.R.T at the Women's Center of Stanislaus. And he's discussed how his own story of survivorship has motivated him to support his peers in learning about healthy relationships and preventing teen dating violence. And as Megan mentioned earlier, we know that all legislators need support with understanding what prevention is, what it looks like in communities, and especially how we know it works. So what's often evoked for them is violence after it's already happened, or they'll ask about crisis intervention strategies. And we really feel like survivors can build a bridge of understanding by describing their lived experiences and what would have been needed to prevent the abuse in the first place. So we can shift social norms, and this work needs more resources, obviously. So this is where we'll get to the importance of lobbying for prevention funding specifically. And we'll have an interest form where people can sign up to learn more about our policy advocacy day next spring after they watch the videos. And this will all be easily shareable on our social media platforms. And I'm gonna pass the mic back over to Michelle. Next slide, please.
Okay, so we have multiple ways for people to plug into the campaign. One way is to share the resource page. It'll, because it'll contain a lot of good introduction information for everyone. And then, of course, we'd love for you to retweet and share a lot of the OpDocs when they come out. There's a lot of bills and things that we're working on. And so it would be great if you could retweet some of those and tag your local legislators to show that, people in their community and their constituents care about those issues. And then tune into the IG Live when we have those. And so all of this information will be on a social media guide that we will provide for you. So it'll contain all of the videos that are coming out and when, and some sample tweets for your legislators. We're also going to include a guide for pitching to media, and the schedule of like when the IG Lives and everything will be. All right, next slide. And I will pass the mic on to Megan.
Right, so as we mentioned before, we're gonna talk a little bit about the why and what we found effective and the reason kind of behind the decisions that we made for this campaign. And like we visited it in the beginning, the OpDocs really were excuse me, a a counter to the new formats that Instagram is going through. And so really focusing on video, live, those sort of mediums that they're shifting towards putting more emphasis on. Increasing engagement, and so with positive true value statements that resonate right before sharing tough information. And so this really is.
Oh yeah, I could share about that because so I used to work in a local program, and one of the things that worked for us was putting these kind of not just like really easily likable posts up, you know, and then you kind of sandwich in posts that aren't necessarily as engaging, you know, so everyone, that way it increases your engagement so that it starts showing up at the top of people's feeds, and then you slide in something that might not get as much engagement, but is, you know, super important for people to hear. And so that's one trick that you can use to try to increase engagement on your page so that people can hear everything about DVAM.
Thanks, Michelle. Yes, so really trying to work with how the algorithm is set up and playing the algorithm game, if you will. Also, the value of repetition and knowing your audience. So the value of repetition, I believe, was a point that we had made of, correct me.
Yeah, so you can post things multiple times, right? So not only sharing like the OpDocs in your feed, but you can also do it on your stories.
Right.
You know, and if it's a point that's really important, you know, like I'm sure we'll be posting multiple times about what prevention is and that domestic violence is preventable, because, you know, not all the posts reach everyone every time.
Mm-hmm. One quick thing I wanted to add too about repetition in messaging is that it takes 7 times to internalize a message. So don't be afraid to repeat that values-based messaging throughout your campaign, whatever it includes. Good messages are audience-focused and they meet their needs. They use everyday language and they're easily understood. And oftentimes they're somewhat brief as well. So you can always connect to more information after you initially post. That was all I wanted to say there.
Yep, and then finally knowing your audience. So this kind of goes back to when you're posting on different platforms, really tailoring your audiences, right? Not every platform is created equally and has the same engagement, right? For example, for us, usually our Twitter is a lot more policy focused. That's where we get engagement with legislators, and say on Facebook or Instagram. So really knowing the target audience that you're trying to reach. The content, can go out on each of those platforms, but like the messaging may slightly need to change to reach the audiences that you have following you on those platforms. So next slide, and I'm gonna pass it over to Jess.
Thank you. This is actually where Miranda has the most expertise. They have done so many awareness campaigns locally and also just supported preventionists throughout the past few years. So Miranda, is it cool if I pass the mic to you?
Yeah, of course. So we wanted to open it up to hear what your thoughts are on the campaign, and also what are some of the things that you have planned. We know that folks are in a weird kind of transition. Some folks are back to in-person, and for others, like in our area, our COVID cases have increased, so we are very definitely doing things virtually. And I know, talking with a lot of preventionists, it's a fun kind of funky hybrid. I use fun as kind of an ironic, as folks are trying to adjust and kind of trying to make the best of things. I'm curious, what is your planning looking like for Domestic Violence Awareness Month? And please feel free to unmute and we can have a conversation. This is also an opportunity. You have folks from policy, from communications and prevention at the partnership all on. Sorry, Christine, I'm kind of throwing you under the bus here for a second. But if you are wanting to check in, it's a great time to be able to do that too. And I'll stop sharing just so that we can see everybody.
Hey everyone, I'll speak. My name is Anna Maria McGarry, and she, her, and Aloni Muwekma Land. And I'm with the wonderful Building Futures in Alameda County, East Bay, San Leandro, Alameda, Oakland, and a couple of my teammates are here on the call. So for last year, what we did, it was like, for me, it was super important to be on this call. And what we did last time was, and I have like a more finalized list, but we did an outreach mailing. So we did a series of postcards. We did it in the 3 languages, and we have it on our website. So it's just updating what we had done before. And then it had a blurb. We really wanted to work on the policy part, but just with COVID and everything, it was really hard for us. But we said, you know, we're still supporting survivors during the pandemic, virtual group and individual counseling for families, women, men, and we offer community education and outreach. And so we did this postcard and mailed it out. And then we also did, through some city deliverable that we had to do, we also mailed out 200 postcards to each one of the public schools and made connection with those folks. And then to make it easy on us, we used the support of a mailing house, you know, somebody to do that, because we didn't have volunteers coming into our offices, and a bunch of us were working from home and had kids and all that kind of stuff. And then we had recently updated our webpage, and so we made a special webpage just for awareness. So it's bfwc.org/awareness. And so I had a resource list and images of our Facebook posts and the postcard on there, kind of all on one page. And then we also did a series of the social media posts connected to the stats around domestic violence and awareness, and connected to the stats of how many calls we get as an agency, etc. And maybe Jessica Rogers, maybe you want to jump on after I talk about any of these things. And then we also did presentations, you know, virtually on Zoom, and kind of getting used to all of that, but did like some DV 101 presentations to staff at a local elementary school, to UPS's Women in Operations team, to the Starbucks Women Impact Network, and to a grassroots gun violence group called Safe Alameda, and a similar one, Mom Demand Action, and just other types of education. And so that was really good. The year before, we got a great idea from all of you all and somebody at Chico State to do coffee mug like sleeves that had our crisis line on it, and that had the positive messaging, but that just to let, and then we partnered with one of the local super popular coffee shops, but we had to like go there and make sure that they were there like every 2 days, and oh, we forgot it, you know, so it's a lot of hand holding. And then we did it with another local coffee shop in Alameda. You know, with Starbucks or something, you'd have to get like the okay or something like that. And we didn't do an event last year, but the year prior we did like you know, feel good free event at a brewery, and they had a special purple beer to celebrate us, and they donated a couple cents from each beer that was purchased to go back to us. And so those were the things that we were doing before, and you know, we're kind of just brainstorming, and these meetings every year has been super helpful, so thank you.
That's great. And it's good to hear about how it went with the coffee sleeves, because I do remember when you had put them together, and I was wondering, like, was the coffee shop consistent about using them? Was it something you had to remind them? So that's really good to know that it was having to just kind of remind them.
You have to be pleasantly persistent, right? And it's like the manager of the coffee shop, he had just lost his best friend to DV. And so like he was personally invested in helping us. But it was just the craziness of COVID. And that wasn't even before COVID, but it was just the craziness of always having to have them stocked. And like I would drop by every 2-3 days to make sure they were there. And, you know, so it was a lot of hand holding. I think it was worth it, but it just takes people power, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is having to be reminding folks. I found when, you know, putting up displays and those types of things, of having to remind them of, okay, it's time to get things up. I know that when I'd worked in a local program, we had worked with the Kaiser Women's Center to put up some of our the denim for Denim Day for Sexual Assault Awareness. And then we had talked with them, okay, you're doing this, so now, like, do you want to do some t-shirts too for Domestic Violence Awareness Month? And they were like, yeah, we can. And I just happened to have an appointment about a week before and was like, hey, I need to talk to whoever's in charge because they're not up yet. But it is having that continued communication and the way you can build those relationships with community partners. So that's awesome.
It's Jessica here from Building Futures. Can everyone hear me? I'm commuting. I'm sorry.
Can hear you
we
just
can
fine.
hear you.
Okay. So yeah, I would love to hear how you got connected with Kaiser, because they are just so hard to figure out who do I talk to, and you know. So I've tried that in the past, and they're just such a large, you know, hospital and medical group that it's really hard for me to figure out, like, who do I talk to? Because I love that idea, doing the denim and then doing the shirts. And so some other things that we're thinking about for Awareness Month is, one thing that I want to do at our safe house, which I've done in a few years ago, is doing the t-shirts, and then either the clients can keep them, and we'll hang them up around the place, and if they leave, when they leave, they can take them, we can leave them behind, and then hopefully every year we can sort of add on to it. So that's one thing I'm kind of excited. So obviously, hopefully COVID will allow us to do that. Maybe we can do it outside or something, so the weather's still nice. And then the other thing we're thinking too is, pivoting more towards video, and I've kind of floated the idea of, because we had sort of somebody that we played at our gala, and I just feel like it's so effective when you can hear someone's story. So I'm liking those ideas as well.
Yeah, for sure. One of the ways that I had gotten connected with Kaiser was I saw that they had a resource fair coming up. So I had reached out to them and said, hey, we'd love to be a vendor at that, so that we can come and talk to folks about the services for adults and children who have been impacted by domestic and sexual violence. And totally separate, I'd had a doctor's appointment and had to go into the women's health, and said, hey, Sexual Assault Awareness Month is coming. You know, they always ask the questions around, like, have you been impacted, et cetera. And I was like, hey, you know, we could partner together. And the doctor was like, what are you talking about? But they got me connected to the person who was like running the office, and just, it was having like that consistent following up with that person of, here's some things that we could do. One thing I would let folks know is, like, sometimes with your artwork, they have to specially treat them so that they have flame retardant on them. And we had some conversations with them, and they were like, can we just keep it to be able to put it up? Because if we do different things every year, then we're going to have to specially treat it, et cetera. So we like talked that through. But it was just, you know, once you're a preventionist, you're always a preventionist. It's trying to, because it wasn't an emergency situation, it was just being able to talk with them about, hey, you asked these questions, like, what kind of follow-up do you have? Do you know what the resources are? And talking to them a little bit about our organization. The doctor and the nurse that I was working with were newer to the area. But that had kind of gotten my foot in the door, and having them do a warm introduction really helped, along with showing up for resource fairs and then inviting them out to our events as well. Obviously this is pre-COVID, so it can get a little bit trickier, but I know that there's ways in, and they have done a lot of work around like training for staff and those types of things. So just being able to leverage, hey, these are the things that I see that you all are doing that are phenomenal, and how can we continue to support you and to be able to support your patients who may be impacted. So there's definitely
That's
some
very
luck there
helpful.
too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, bugging them a bunch. That's good.
Is anybody doing the like anybody doing big, and then under COVID and the variant and all of that, trying to figure out if it makes sense for us financially, but is anybody doing like big signs on buses or at the shopping malls or anything like that? And what does that cost, like randomly? And then is anybody doing the, you know, the partnership with the hairdressers and the purple hair and that kind of stuff? That was cool and just really touched my heart when I heard about it.
At my old organization, a local program that I worked for, we didn't do any like big billboard signs, but those little like campaign lawn signs. Well, we got a bunch of those like donated, and a lot of places will let you just stick them anywhere around the city without having to like pay for the giant billboard. And so that was like a really cost-effective way for us to promote things. And then we stuck them around shopping centers in like population areas that we were trying to aim for.
I can share what I'm working on. I'm Liz from Valley Crisis Center in Merced. So last year we did everything virtually. So we had a few collaborations, like different resources in our community, and we kind of did like a 1-hour talk. We had like a yoga event, and it was pretty disappointing. There was very, very low participation, and I don't want to do it again. I felt like it was not effective. So we are trying to do, obviously COVID is different now, but always crazy. So we are trying to do in person, but it's basically like we need a plan A and plan B, which is difficult because I feel like it's hard to do plan A, let alone also think about shifting everything. So, but we are trying to tie it. I don't know if any other communities received this grant that are on this call, but there's an ACEs Aware campaign from the state that Merced County got money for. And we weren't super directly involved, but I think that kind of inspired me to make our October events around the impact on kids in domestic violence homes, or, you know, adults who were children in domestic violence homes. So we're trying to kind of do the ACEs stuff. So I'd really like to plan, you know, an event at a local park. So we're outside, we're avoiding inside COVID spread, maybe even at our local zoo or something where it's something that maybe families could go to already, and then kind of have resources, you know, have some speakers do that kind of thing and just have everything outside. So, and then another thing that I think maybe could be replicated other places, we're wanting to kind of do butterfly wings, like purple butterfly wings, because I think that's like a cute kind of kids and DV mix. And we're trying to do it like, you know, those like big angel wings that everyone has like on Instagram, like do that somewhere. So like, I don't know if it's going to be a wood board or a sign somewhere in Merced where people can go take pictures of it and maybe have a QR code to donate, or a QR code to our website to get some more info, and maybe put a hashtag with it, something that can be on social media. So that's what we're trying to do.
That sounds great.
I saw a local dance studio, Hip Line, here in Oakland, and they, you know, they really uplift the voices of women of color, and they were doing some fundraiser for another DV organization, and so they were like offering free classes, and they've gotten the virtual dance class thing together. And my other staff member, Naima, was kind of working with them to help them with communication stuff. And it was cool because when I did my first virtual dance class with them, it was super fun. It was super engaging. So work with somebody that's already doing that and already has a following, right? And so I was like, oh, that's cool. And then me and Jennifer were talking about, oh, wow, wouldn't that be cool next year if we could do like some sort of walkathon or something, but just kind of thinking about virtual stuff that you don't have to manage it. People go do it on their own time. And then you all asked about the purple hair. I love the purple butterfly wings. I think that's so cool, and especially like as much as we can create joy and create hope and uplift resilience and the powerfulness of what we're doing, right? So the purple hair was really cool. I'm sure somebody can speak to this a lot more eloquently, but hairstylist salons are the places that have the most impactful, or people really, when you're getting your hair done, you really tell your hairstylist a lot, and you see them every 2 months or something. So a lot of times the hair cutters know a lot about people's personal information. So the idea is that we would give them a whole stack of these, or smaller, something smaller, more discreet. They would give them to every one of their clients, and then they'd say, hey, in October we're going to be doing one streak of your hair could be purple, or one streak of your hair could be purple, or your whole hair, right? And then when people ask, oh, you have purple hair, then you can tell them why you're doing it, or you can give them a little sticker, whatever it might be. That's, and it seemed like it was like really, I'm seeing somebody saying the nail salon event also with purple nails, and then they can take photos or videos and tag you on Instagram, etc. But that was, a cute idea that seemed like it wouldn't be a lot of work. Like we just do it with 2 salons or 2 hairstylists, just to kind of get those juices flowing. And so that I was really excited about that. And I think Jessica Rogers said that we had done that in past years before I was with Golden Futures.
And for anybody not wanting to color their hair, I know that some of my friends have also bought wigs. You can get them fairly inexpensive in a lot of spaces that were really great shades of purple and lavender. So that can be an option as well, something that's a little less permanent, because I know sometimes there can be that anxiety about bleaching or coloring. But yeah, ClipIn Streaks, there's all kinds of ways to be able to raise that awareness. I saw somebody, Elizabeth had mentioned doing a nail salon with purple nails. That's really cool. And also being able to have, I've done it before with purple ribbons on nails. They probably were not great, but whatever, they work. Also with barbershops is, we know that domestic violence is not exclusive to female identified. So being able to go into traditionally masculine spaces as well and working with barbers. I know one of our colleagues, her son was in training for doing haircuts and had partnered with a barbershop to do haircuts and to raise awareness for folks. Like they could get a more inexpensive haircut or a little bit of a discount if they, got to know something about domestic violence and its impacts on the community. So that's another way to raise space. I know a lot of times we think specifically around like hair salons. Barbershops are also, there's a lot of barbershops in a lot of different areas. So that would be a great way to engage men and boys in your community as well. And maybe getting some PSAs, just a quick little, like, this is why I want to get engaged in ending domestic violence, and doing a quick little video that you can put up on your social media that they can also share on their social media. You can tag them. It becomes a way of engaging. Absolutely, the unexpected messengers like you're talking about, Jessica, and also a way to engage more folks in the community of like, we recognize these are really challenging times. It gives them an option to be able to get the word out there and to challenge their fellow community members to also get involved. So that can be a fairly inexpensive. It can be a little time consuming in terms of building those relationships, but that can be a great way to build some space too.
I did a training for sports clips one year where they had like a staff meeting, or they were, at the end of their training or something. And so sports clips, I know is, you know, if anyone's interested in, but I know it's like kind of like franchise thing. They're open to that kind of stuff. And another thought I have is, some people know I'm very heavily tattooed, and I just had a thought where tattoo shops as well.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, my tattoo guy that I go to, I'm his feminist guru basically, you know, and his DV resource, and he's always, you know, so I'm helping him, you know, navigate those conversations. So tattoo shops too would be a great resource.
Yeah, absolutely. Tattoo shops would be phenomenal. You're going to spend a couple of hours at least there, and you're going to have some really intensive conversations. And I know that particularly for some survivors I've worked with over the years, getting a tattoo was, it was something that was really meaningful for them, and to being able to step into that space. But it can also be sometimes triggering, as depending on like your pain tolerance and all kinds of different factors. But that would be a great space to be able to raise some awareness as well. And if they were willing to donate some of the proceeds, even just a percentage back to the organization, that could be a really cool tie-in as well. But especially being able to do some training. I know anytime that I've gone into tattoo shops, it's trying to have those conversations, because it can get sometimes, depending on the individuals, it can sometimes get a little questionable, but I found that for the most part, folks are really open to the conversations in a lot of different areas. So I'm having like a specific thinking of the last time I was in a tattoo shop. There were some sexist comments, and I called it out and, you know, invited them into a conversation. They were not used to that, but definitely open, which was great.
I have a question. So something that I've been wanting to really be intentional about at our events is that it's not just a resource fair where, you know, people go around and all these resources. Like, I really want our message to come through. And I think that that's like, it's a bigger question of how do we talk about domestic violence in a very meaningful way that's also appropriate for an outside park where it's not a survivor support group. How do we get that message, you know, of hopefulness for kids, but right, you're doing that through parents as well. So I'm wondering how you all make sure that at your events, like if you do have tabling events and resources where people, there's maybe not like they're not locked into you talking in the front of the room, they're kind of doing, you know, what they do around their resources. Like, how do you still make sure your points get across, and what points are you trying to make?
So what are some ways that people are lifting up the protective factors? Both the protective and the risk factors in that. Because it can get like that. If you have the resource fairs, you see people going around, like, even if you do, like, you get to X amount of tables and you can be entered in a raffle prize, etc. Like, people are grabbing the brochures, but they're not really getting information. So I would almost think like having, one of the things that I'd always wanted to do, but did not get to do, was kind of following somebody's journey through the organization. So like, here's what happens when you first come in, like first point of contact could be the crisis line, etc. And then as they're going to the different tables, they're learning about, here's all the ways that we support folks through that process, as well as, you know, really honing in on prevention and what that looks like. So some of the ways that we prevent somebody ever being a survivor, or ever being impacted by violence, and the ways that we work towards safer communities, as well as for somebody who has been impacted, here's what some of that can look like, and having it where it's both adults and for children, because there's, you know, of course, supports throughout the organization for both. That was one of the my big dream. Unfortunately, I just was not able to put all of that together, but I think that could be a way. What are some other things that folks have done to be able to focus on their messaging?
I can chat just a little bit about our zine that we created that has been out for a while, but hoping to leverage during DVAM and like the months leading up to it. So we printed this booklet that's like the Community Without Violence, and I'll put the link to the digital version in the chat. But the booklet has these like pages, like how do you, I don't know if it's flipped or not, but how do you model consent in your daily life? What does a healthy relationship mean to you? So we're having folks like fill these out, those like blank pages, whether like online or like if they have a printed copy, they can like paint it or whatever and like send it back to us. So that's kind of like a way that we're addressing like the protective factors. And then I just put the link for the zine in the chat, and this was entirely created by youth. It features like healthy relationship tips, and like everything in here was written by teens, and it also features art from local youth artists, and it's actually been really successful. We've put this in coffee shops and other partner agencies, and we've had people that we've never heard of reach out to us saying like, how can we get copies of the booklet? So I think that's how we're going to leverage it for DVAM at least, to say like, okay, like fill these pages out and send them back to us, because it like addresses the dating violence and domestic violence too.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Artie.
Another question, how are people navigating past partnerships with police? Because I know that our events have traditionally been sponsored by PD, and yeah, how is anyone else navigating? Have they moved away from partnerships? What's been happening with that?
And even if you're not sure what that looks like within your organization now, if it's a conversation that you're having, I think it's definitely a good one to have as you're looking at the risk and protective factors and how the community may feel about engaging with law enforcement or an absolute not wanting any engagement. It's a great question, and I know it's incredibly challenging. What are some folks' thoughts about it? I know sometimes I've talked with folks who are getting pressure to engage with law enforcement around awareness campaigns and feeling like absolutely that's not what our community wants, and trying to navigate the pressures from leadership that we have to have these partnerships or may have law enforcement on the board of directors, and how challenging that is to navigate when also supporting Black Lives Matter and other intersecting movements, and you know, the queer and trans community, who a lot of times does not want to engage with law enforcement because of ongoing abuses.
I know that our organization relies on police during Domestic Violence Awareness Month traditionally to cover fees associated with rentals. So like we rent a community space and like law enforcement pays with it. And like, you know, we just have like no budget for these events, like really zero budget for these events. And like we could go get, you know, I think like we could try harder to get community sponsors, but I'm wondering if we just all of a sudden try to get different community sponsors, if law enforcement's going to be like, you know, we always partner with this event, or maybe they wouldn't even notice. Honestly, I have no idea. But even like, so we do a march called Peace for Families. And so we do this march, and like, I know I got feedback from a supervisor saying like, oh, get the Explorers. I don't know if you like, it's like the youth program for police. Like the Explorers can like provide safety as we're walking. And I was like, that's unnecessary. It's not a busy street. Like, why do it? And they like really wanted to make that partnership. And I eventually reached out and got nothing back from them. So it was kind of a moot point, but I think it's just like unnecessary engagement. But I also know, like, I was just at an event over the weekend called Kids Connect, and PD was there with patrol cars and stuff, and kids like love it. Kids love it. And so we don't have that at our event usually, but the community is often interested in police being at events, and kids can view it as fun. And I think that we have to take responsibility for what space we're giving to promote that community building really that's happening with police and the community. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's definitely not an easy question. What does that look like in some of your organizations? Or are you having those conversations?
So for Building Futures, our main interaction with police tends to come from our emergency shelters, sometimes from our safe house as well. But in terms of our outreach events and stuff, we haven't had too much involvement with them, but I do know that we're trying to build up that relationship. So we'll probably, utilize our existing connections that we already have with the shelters and trying to build that out.
Okay.
And we've also had to, really have some of the hard conversations in leadership around like, okay, if in terms of like how police are affecting our different clients, recently in San Leandro, about a year and a half ago, a client was killed by the police at Walmart in San Leandro. And it was actually somebody that, the main policeman, mental health person who's no longer there, knew that person had mental health issues, and he was a Black man, and that he should have been diagnosed as that, not as an aggressive and get killed, And so it was like, why don't you call us? We know this person, why don't you put the right policeman on the job, right? But in general, I mean, I think that, for us in terms of engaging, and reframing and being really aware of how what we talk about internally and what we talk about externally when we're looking at the impact of our, police brutality on the wonderful, folks that are part of our community. Right? So yeah.
And Teresa, I know you're unmuted.
Yeah, I was just going to say, within my organization, we have the domestic violence response teams at different police stations. So I would imagine, like, what I would want, or what I think the organization should do is like everybody is saying, like reframing what our partnership really is with the law enforcement. Because right now I know they bring in, numbers, for the grant, and that's how we get a lot of our clients and referrals and things of that nature. So I think the best thing that I can do, since I work in the Pasadena area and we do partner sometimes with the Pasadena PD. I guess it's just what I would want that partnership to look like with the university that we're working with. And unfortunately, there's not much of a relationship, and the students at Caltech definitely have very strong feelings about Pasadena PD. So I think I've tried to avoid it, but yeah, I love hearing these ideas, because unfortunately, I just don't know if my organization is there yet, but I would like to, you know, foster something with the capabilities that I have.
That's great. Thank you. And I just wanted to have some matchup with what your outside messaging is and what you're doing internally. And it's not an easy road to navigate. There's a lot of folks do have the MOUs, and that's where some of the funding comes from. And so that can be really challenging to try and step away from. And some survivors are wanting to engage with that. Some community members are wanting to engage with that, and some absolutely don't. So trying to find like where do we fall in that mix? And yeah, it's not an easy conversation. I know it's one that we have ongoing in our field, and we definitely need to keep looking at what does that look like. And I like that approach of what do I want that to look like within my scope. So thank you. And other questions that folks have? I know we have a lot of folks on the call, so I want to make sure to have some space for that.
I'd like to know what people's budgets are like. Also, if anyone else has questions, please let me know, because I will ask a million questions. But what are people's budgets? Because I've gotten like $100 to do 2 big events, and that's just, I mean, they just want everything donated. And I'm like, by the time I spend 2 hours trying to get ice donated, I could have bought ice. Like, this is so frustrating. So how are people making money to do events?
I know sometimes I would pressure the board to put their money where their mouth was. And that had mixed results. Sometimes it was staff members, parents who own shops or who were willing to donate, which we should never have to resort to that, but it is sometimes that reality. So I'm curious if other folks are, and Samantha, having board members organize events themselves. Are you willing to expand on that a little bit? Because I'm curious how that works.
So our board members have a commitment of a certain amount. I'm pretty new to the nonprofit world, so maybe that's typical, but I think that is typical. But instead, like for example, we haven't had our big gala last year, or we're not having it this year. So this is kind of separate from DVAM, but we're, instead of spending money on events, we're asking board members to fundraise for us by hosting their own events. For example, one of our board members who worked for the Blue Shield Foundation and is particularly involved with their Pacific Asian employee group, organized a comedy event. And like, it was, if you get so much money donated, we'll host this comedy event for you. And so that's one of the things that was done. Last year, we had board members connect with a restaurant, and that restaurant did a tutorial and organized ingredients. And one of our board members has a bar, so she provided the drinks, and some of the fundraised amount went to covering the costs, but the rest went to our organization. So those are a couple things that are happening, but not all board members are like, we've given them ideas. They're like, oh, we don't know what to do. So we've given them ideas, and then they're like, do nothing with them. So, I mean, one thing that's been helpful is using the board members doing a good job as an example of what can be done.
Yeah, I like that. And it is that challenge of how engaged are they going to be and what does that look like? And I also wonder about being able to train the board members to really understand the risk and protective factors before going out and doing events. Or as a support to those events. Thank you. And are there other questions for folks? Or events that you're working on, that you're considering?
I think for a plan B, we might do a drive instead of a march. And then a considered name is Drive Out Domestic Violence, if anyone needs a theme.
At the end of this call, one of you from the partnership, could you folks talk for like 3 minutes about Boulder advocacy? Is that the name? Yeah, Boulder advocacy, because it was so helpful for me to understand lobbying and limits and nonprofit and stuff like that.
Yeah, I definitely can. Whenever you want.
Sorry.
What's that?
Do you want me to do that now, or did you want me to do that later? I don't want to interrupt the conversation.
I'm fine with if you wanted to answer some questions around that now.
Sure. So Boulder Advocacy has some great information. I'm actually checking in with Sarah Matlin, who had presented, I think she's presented to this group. She's probably presented to every partnership group we have. But she's really the leader on that. And she talks to nonprofits a lot about how you can lobby. She did a recorded presentation for us earlier to kind of get people involved in Policy Advocacy Day. So I can definitely send that to Miranda so they can send that out to all of you if you would like. I think the slides are in there as well, but effectively nonprofits can lobby. There are requirements around it. You cannot be partisan in anything that you're talking about, but you certainly can lobby. You do need to report correctly, so that information is in those slides and is certainly available, but you can lobby, you can talk to your legislators. I think a lot of the stuff around DVAM tends to not be as kind of legislative specific, but all the work that you've been doing, for those of you who attended Policy Advocacy Day, that is lobbying, and you have a right to do it, and you should do it, because you're the ones, especially preventionists, who know how important prevention funding is. You know the impact that this has on your communities. Like when we're having these conversations, like you're the one who's the best advocate for it, because you speak to it with so much heart and so much truth. So I'm happy to send those resources along. And then I'm also, again, having a conversation with Sarah really soon. So I'm happy to, what I'm hoping is to update our website with some resources so that they're easily accessible. And certainly, you know, we've been doing so much work on prevention. I think they're worth posting on the prevention page to make sure that everyone knows how and why they can advocate for themselves and how and why they can do lobbying. So you know, as nonprofit employees, there are some things we can't say, but there are many things we can. Like there's a recall election coming up. You should vote. Totally appropriate to say. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I can tell you where to find the information. I can tell you how to get a Save at Home application and to use their website. But I can absolutely say, like, ballots are out. You should go vote. I turned in my ballot. You know, things like that, like completely fine to say. So, you know, I'm happy to have those conversations as needed. And I'll put my email in the chat.
I think Miranda might be having some connection issues, but when they come back, I can pass the mic over to them. But
Miranda lost all internet.
What's that?
Miranda lost all internet.
Oh no!
Lost all their internet.
Oh, Miranda. But yeah, I mean, any other questions? Or like, I was just curious. I know many folks here on this call work with youth. Are there any specific ways that you're engaging them in your DVAM campaign? And this is also a space to just like blurt out ideas, even if they're a little bit like unfinalized. So if you just want to brainstorm or if you want to workshop some ideas, this is the space to do it as well. Hey, Miranda's back.
Oh, the joys of technology. Yeah, all of my internet kicked off completely, but yay, I have hotspot on my phone. So I'm gonna make this work. And were there, as I'm jumping in, were there any other questions, comments, things that folks wanted to lift up?
Is there anything that the partnership could do to support you? Is there any support you need from us? So I know when I worked in local programs and I was in charge of doing the prevention social media domestic violence awareness month stuff, one thing that was really helpful was yeah, all of making pre-made social media posts. That way I could just schedule them out and not even have to think about them. So I'm gonna try to include as many of those as possible in the social or DVAM just to make things easier. But if there's anything else you'd like me to include or anything specific, please let me know.
Sorry, Michelle, you cut out for a second. Were you saying that you're going to include this like social posts like in the
yeah, in the social media guide, just to make everything as easy as possible. But is there anything else you'd like me to include?
I think what might be helpful is like even like topics that maybe necessarily like you all don't have the capacity to like make posts for, but like to say, hey, this would be cool to like explore maybe like how this is presenting in your community specifically. And that way like we get ideas for topics and then we can create them ourselves, because sometimes just the brainstorming part can be difficult. And maybe that can be like things that maybe are a little more radical that maybe the partnership can't do, but maybe our agencies can, or something along those lines, you know?
Oh, I love it. Okay.
That's super helpful, Artie. Thank you. You know what was really helpful for me before was seeing the awareness days and kind of seeing like a calendar of different things that, you know, different DV dates of interest, denim day and purple, you know, wear purple day and all that. And so then that way, when we're looking at our general communications calendar, there's specific dates, you know, International Women's Day, you know, whatever it might be. And I have a list of that somebody that the partnership passed me from somebody else that had created it, so I can share that with you if you want.
Oh, yes, please, because I'll combine that with ours, make sure that we have all of them.
You know, I usually check in with NNEDB about Purple Thursday, and I haven't yet. So let me do that, and in the follow-up materials, we can include that date.
Yeah, and if folks are wanting to share their events that they're going to be doing throughout the year or throughout the month, then we could easily put that up on our prevention page, so folks can have a space to be able to look and see, here's some of the things, and I'm volunteering to post that for folks, not trying to add to anybody else's plate. But just to be able to get a sense of what are some of the other activities that folks are doing. So if people would like to share that, let me put my email in the chat. Anybody else have it where they misspell their name? Okay. And then we can, I always found it helpful to be able to see what others were doing as I was planning and putting events together. So, and especially with those social media posts and being able to schedule those. Some of the things that I had done around that was like 31 ways in 31 days you can get involved, and you know, focusing on prevention as well as intervention opportunities for folks.
Yeah, and if you have any cool programs that you've done, or like things like the Zine that were really cool, feel free to share it with me. And I'm working on e-news and stuff, so I'd love to feature those projects and share those out with folks so they can see all the good work you're doing. I'll put my email in the chat.